Hello and welcome to Krackle Comics, episode number 24. We're back talking new books this week. Dan's on vacation, so it's just me and Vince. How are the books?
I don't know, they're all right. I was honestly not super impressed.
There were books I liked and books I didn't like. There was one book I liked, but you didn't read it. But I'm gonna keep trying to get you to read it. But you have a haul segment?
Yeah, so I've got 3 books to quickly show off. So the actual comic book to show is the Deadpool Max oversized hardcover, which is the only book that has all of Deadpool Max together. This is the written by David Lapham, drawn at least a lot of it by Kyle Baker, and some by Sean Crystal and Lapham himself. So interesting run, and obviously it's Max. This is not canon, unlike 1 or 2 Max books like Alias, and it's obviously weird. Also, I want to point out that it has one of these security thingy things on the back, and it's going to be risky taking that off. And now I have 2 kind of art book type things. So I've got Jack Kirby Pencils and Inks from IDW. It's called an Artisan Edition, which I think Artisan Edition is like, so obviously IDW is the leading publisher and probably the creator of the format of the Artist Edition. And I believe Artisan Edition is maybe like the smaller versions. They've produced just a few of these, but this isn't even like in that realm. But what's cool about this book is that it's pencils and inks. So on one page you have the original pencils from Kirby, and then the other page inks. At a certain point, Kirby started, or whoever, his assistants or family, or whoever worked with him, at a certain point he started scanning or keeping all of his pencils. And I think it's some point in the 70s, like once he had already gone to DC. So it's possible that all the inks in here maybe are Mike Royer. I'm not 100% certain. It's probably all Mike Royer. So, but I'm not certain if it's the entire full issues, but in here is Demon #1, Commandy #1, and OMAC #1. So basically his DC stuff, his major DC stuff minus the Fourth World. And it's literally page by page is just pencils on one side, inks on the other side. It's just really fascinating kind of look. Here's the cover of Commandy. Really fascinating look at Kirby's work and just kind of process stuff. And a relatively, it's $50 cover price, which I guess, I don't know, it's a decent-ish book. But this, I guess, is going out of print. I don't really know how you describe that for art books, so that was kind of an impulse buy. And then I finally received this, which I pre-ordered, and I'm not going to show off much, but it's The Big Tease by Bruce Timm. This is the latest Bruce Timm art book, and it's not precisely what I was expecting, but it's got some fun stuff. That's my haul.
Noticed how you had to put your hand on the cover there, because we were immediately striked if you don't.
No, there's no strike. I'll just show it. There's no nip slip. So this is totally legal. On YouTube, you have unless you completely fit the bill, everything is marked as not safe for kids nowadays anyways. It also comes with 2 prints, which are both also marginally safe for work. The next one is a little bit less safe for work. So I'll spare everyone and not show it.
You good?
Yeah.
You're going to end up messing with the algorithms.
But now the content of this book, so this is The Big Tease, A Naughty and Nice Collection. And this follows a book called, or I think it's a series of books, but there was another big hardcover of this kind of, size and stuff from this publisher, Flesk, called just Bruce Timm Naughty and Nice or whatever. And that thing is like ridiculously expensive on the secondhand market. It came out years ago. But now flipping through this, I mentioned how I'm kind of surprised by the specific content of it. Now I guess even more so want to check out the older one, or see what it's actually in it, if it differs. But Bruce Timm is kind of a pervert, I'll just say that, and sort of not really at all relevant to the first book we're going to talk about.
I mean, relevant tangentially, though we are getting into the rundown now. And we're going to kick things off with arguably the only Batman book that any of us have any desire to read right now, at least until Joker War is over. It's Batman: The Adventures Continue, chapters 6 and 7, this digital first series from DC Comics. And Alan Burnett, Paul Dini, and Ty Templeton, they're all back again to continue the adventures of the DC animated universe Batman. This, I'm guessing, taking place between, those final episodes of the new Batman Adventures and before Justice League, or maybe this takes place while Justice League's happening. I have no idea. But chapter 6 is the conclusion to Mentors, which is the story that introduces Deathstroke, and then Lex Luthor informs Slade that he has 24 hours to get Batman, so he puts his plan into action. And as they've been using like Firefly as the ruse, and then Bruce and Tim are sitting down for dinner while Tim tries to get Bruce to go out to the movies, but he still says he's grounded after going out and hanging out with Deathstroke, where Batman warned him not to. But the bat signal lights up, and Batman arrives to see Gordon and the rest of the GCP be knocked out by sleeping gas by Slade, and he's like, "Hey, I know where Firefly is," and that gets Batman's attention, so they go to team up. And then we flash to Barbara being contacted by Tim in the Batcave as she's working in a library. She's a librarian now, and they're talking about how she hasn't been contacted by someone in a year, and I'm guessing that's Dick. Maybe it's Jason, but I don't really know. It's kind of left up in the air, but she finds a bookmark reading "It's a trap," which tips her off that Batman's going to be double-crossed by Slade. And this now flashes to Batman and Slade fighting Firefly, and then Batman figures out that, Firefly isn't the real Firefly, it's Slade's sidekick in disguise because of the lifts in the shoes. And then Batman gets help from Robin and Batgirl as they heat up Slade's costume that's Kevlar-based, so he's just going to get heated up from the inside, and it forces him to surrender. And then in the Batcave, using the Bat computer, they see that the tip that Barbara got in the library is from their mysterious follower. Then they now know, this guy knows who we are, and that would be Jason Todd. Chapter 7, this is the beginning of a new story arc called The Darker Knight, and this is the introduction of Azrael to the DCAU. And Batman's chasing after Catwoman, but she's stopped by Azrael, and they have a fight with Batman. And Batman beats Azrael with gas pellets, guessing that he didn't insulate his mask. And then Bruce mentions that they fought a long time ago, a lifetime ago to be exact, is to quote it. And then Azrael was after Catwoman because she had stolen the shawl of Magdalene, which is a sacred artifact to the Order of St. Dumas. And then after talking to Selina to getting her to the police, Batman gets a call from Alfred saying they have a visitor. And it's like Azrael holding the sword to Alfred's throat. And then they go meet back in the Batcave and get reacquainted with each other. And then Azrael says he took the armor idea from Batman and tells him how he discovered his identity from their fighting styles. And they agree to team up to find the Shroud. And their case takes them to the Iceberg Lounge where they go to shake down the Penguin. And Batman and Alfred redo Azrael's armor. So now he's got the iconic Bat armor from Nightfall now. And Azrael gets pretty intense with Penguin, but we end up seeing them getting captured or like getting the drop on by Mr. Wing, which was Penguin's new henchman creature, who appears to be like this giant human spliced hawk creature. Maybe that's like a early splicing thing from Batman Beyond. I don't, maybe reading too much into it, but this giant humanoid hawk creature they're gonna have to fight in the next chapter. I'm still liking this book. I still think it's pretty enjoyable. I think Ty Templeton's art is still pretty good here. These are only, I'm pretty much just going to keep talking about them in two chunks because these are only 11 pages and, 2 chapters equal 1 actual issue. But Vince, this is your first dive into this series. What do you think of The Adventures Continue?
Yeah, I jumped right into chapter 7, first time attempting this, and I'm not sure I'm going to return. I like how the credits page looks like a title card, especially in this format. That's a nice little feature. I do not like the new Batman Adventures Catwoman design much, but that's just, that's when this book is set, so that's what they're using. And I feel like the way that they are like, oh yeah, we'll design a new armor for you, because we think we want you to look less imposing for our optics. It was a slightly awkward way to incorporate both the classic and Asbat's designs. But I guess within this art style, they look fine, because that's the other part of this whole series is incorporating characters that were not in the DCAU.
Yeah, from the toilet. So that's when they have both figures. So that's why they have to do both armors.
And it's fine. I mean, yeah, like the writing, I wasn't super impressed by the writing, and I think some of that is not on the writers. I think it's a little bit on the format. Like this, it does. There's a general feel that this is similar to a BTAS episode, but it feels a lot more disposable or something. I don't know how to describe it. A lot more fleeting, and but it's also not quite like the Batman event, like the original Batman Adventures comic. So personally, I just don't feel the need to read this more. Maybe when it's like all done in the can and is reformatted and everything to keep the stories together and on paper, maybe I'll check it out if I find it. But I'm not super invested in this.
I'd say about every two chapters per story arc equal like what an episode would be in terms of looking at it like that. So like the Slade story would have been like 2 episodes, but like the first chapter, I think that was 3 parts. I can look at that as like a 1 episode. I think it's getting better as it goes along. It is kind of weird to see like, oh yeah, we fought a lifetime ago, because like you have to try to incorporate these characters that had never been in this show that has almost 30 years of continuity built up, and that they never did Jason Todd. So that's the big build here, is to show how they're going to integrate him, which obviously they couldn't do him in the show back in 1993 or 97 by the time they got around to doing Tim Drake. But we'll see what they do here, which will be interesting. But keeping with DC, going into DCeased Dead Planet #1, and this reunites the original team of Tom Taylor and Trevor Hairsine. And then we got Gigi Balsdani and Stefano Gaggiano on inks. And this is the next miniseries in the kind of constantly expanding DCeased line or universe, as, like I said, reunites the original team from the first miniseries. And this is going to be #1 of 7. And this is set 5 years after the first one. And we now see that the surviving heroes have set up shop on their new homeworld, dubbed Earth 2. The new Justice League, consisting of Jonathan Kent Superman, Damian Wayne Batman, Black Canary, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Cassie Sands Marks, and Wonder Woman. And then we get there's other characters too in the background, but that's kind of our core that we're working with here. And then we all see them stopping a war begins from these aliens. And then John's able to negotiate a peace treaty with his mother, Lois Lane, who is president of Earth 2. And then Damien's notified by Alfred that his briefcase is being sent a Morse code signal from Cyborg's sentient severed head that's still back on the infected Earth. And it's revealed that Bruce Wayne had planted a deep Morse code alert to the Justice League, that there might be a code to alert the Justice League to say, hey, maybe there is a cure out here, maybe we're wrong. So they all kind of take a vote and realize, all right, let's go investigate. At least let's just get Cyborg's head bounce in, bounce out, we'll be fine. And upon arriving and finding Cyborg's head, they're ambushed, their ship gets hit, and the infected Wonder Woman, the original Wonder Woman, Diana, comes out and just ambushes them. And Oliver Queen gets stabbed. It looks like he's dead or gonna die. And the cliffhanger, seeing that John has learned that there is a cure, but is it too late? Because he gets stabbed through the shoulder in order to get to Wonder Woman, with Black Canary doing that. So, but the cliffhanger here is there is a cure and the heroes are wrong, and are they now too late? I know you don't like this because you just don't care for alternate history stuff, but Tom Taylor carves out his little snippets of the DC universe. He had this, and then before that he had the Injustice universe. And I don't know if it's the sad or the better thing is that he writes these characters more in line with what we want them to be or remember them being before the New 52 took hold in 2011. So it's almost like you can just look at, like, if things didn't get rebooted, this is just like a story arc that maybe happened for like 2 years or something. So if you look at it like that, it totally works. I mean, we flashed in the future. We get some new legacy characters stepping up and taking mantles, which is really a fun thing. But at the heart of it is, like, if the characterization's good, I think that's why these books have been fun. Plus, like, I know in the other miniseries we've gotten to see Cassandra Cain as Batgirl again, and like her original Batgirl costume that we've talked about seeing and liking. So she's no longer like Orphan or Black Bat. So, like, if you're looking for the old kind of remnants of the DC universe, DCeased is kind of the place to go and view it. It's a weird thing to say, but it's definitely like a fun thing to maybe explore.
Yeah, I don't really care. So moving on to Empyre, which is Marvel's latest overhyped crossover event. We read Incoming a long time ago, which was a lead into this, particularly a long time ago at this point. And now I'm actually catching up a little bit. I think this was published in one of the weeks that I wasn't on the show, but since they're back-to-back connected and everything like that, let's talk about Empyre Avengers number 0. This is written by Al Ewing, art by Pepe Larraz. We open with the Kree committing genocide against the Katati in the past by way of Tony Stark's nightmare. And She-Hulk is annoying because that's the current status quo of the Avengers. And Cap calls her just Hulk. I don't know how that works nowadays. The Avengers go off, they land on the blue area of the moon, but now it's an overgrown garden. And suddenly they run into a Kree sentry who's like mutated, and they're trying to figure it out when the Swordsman pops up out of nowhere. But of course, Swordsman died, but then was merged with the Kotati and had a child with Mantis. So Swordsman helps him out, and then that child, Sequoia, aka the Celestial Messiah, shows up. And this issue and his appearance is heavily referencing the last time he was really, existed at all in a comic book. And that was the miniseries Avengers Celestial Quest, which I feel like was at least 10 years ago, maybe like 15. And that itself was a sequel to the Celestial Madonna saga, which is 70s Steve Englehart. And Thor was in that book, so Thor's like, oh, I know you. And Thor helps bring the rain, which I don't fully understand the significance of this, because it's like, oh, we need to grow the garden bigger, but it's like, there's no water on Mars, at least the way it's described here. So how did you grow the garden at all in the first place? It's already huge, so they need a rain to expand it. But then there's also like Tony. Tony's kind of really annoying in this issue. And I think they're trying to go for a certain angle with him. And it kind of sort of does contradict. Whatever. Tony's annoying. And Tony's like, oh, this rain, it's cleansing, even though I have my armor on. It doesn't make any sense. It's just spiritual mumbo jumbo. And Tony goes on and on. He's like, he doesn't believe in gods. While, Thor is standing next to him, which he acknowledges, but he also has bare minimum other teammates like Hercules, like the Forgotten One / Gilgamesh, probably several others definitely others that he's met. And it's like, it's a gray area in the Marvel universe in lore where it's like the Asgardians are gods or they're like a weird alternate dimension higher being. Whatever. The Korean scrolls, as we know, are allying, and the twist here that Swordsman and Sequoia present is that they're not necessarily allying specifically against the Katati. That may be the case. That's his argument. Or that's just like kind of the prelude to whatever their larger plans are. And we do get here, it may have been hinted briefly before, but this is the first major part where we get the idea that Hulkling is being manipulated, which is pretty much what you'd assume, at least based on, assuming that the Avengers are going to be the good guys. And the Avengers are confused about the events of an Incoming, because in Incoming, we saw sort of a Katati kill those two allied Kree and Skrull. So maybe, maybe Sequoia and Swordsman are manipulating here as well. But the Avengers are like, oh, we're the Avengers. And we don't understand any of the politics behind this, but I guess we got to fight because we're the Avengers. So Tony gives honestly, pretty underwhelming pep talk. And then it's like, Avengers assemble. And the Kree and Skrull fleet is approaching Earth. Then the next issue, or actually, Mike, do you have a quick thought on this? I believe you did read this one.
I was just going to give it after you do both.
Okay, that works. All right, Empyre, Fantastic Four, number 0. The numbers don't matter. These are one-shots. Written by Dan Slott, who is the regular Fantastic Four writer, while Al Ewing is not the regular Avengers writer, at least the main title. Art on this issue by R.B. Silva and Sean Isaacs. Sean Isaacs is the artist on Fantastic Four. But they're also, pulling the Marvel's current event comics artists onto this book. So there's a cosmic casino with Kree versus Skrull gladiator fights. It was formerly owned by the Grandmaster, but now it's run by his sister, the Profiteer. And we learn here through the Fantastic Four that the galaxy-wide economy is screwed up. And, that's hinting at just cataclysmic changes in power structure and everything. And I'd like to thank Dan Slott for having both the Masked Singer and Baby Yoda references in this issue. Because it's not like this is an event book that people are hypothetically going to want to read in 50 years. And they're going to be like, what the hell is the Masked Singer and Baby Yoda? I mean, well, they'll know what Baby Yoda is probably. But whatever. It's just stupid, dated references. And it's interesting that Al Ewing doesn't use a single one. Obviously, very anecdotal, 22 pages, but still. And the four get a lift by forcing Ben into one of these gladiator matchups. And there's precedent here, of course. Obviously, Ben fought the Challenger as kind of when he was looking for his cosmic or his universe-wide people that could stand up to him. And then he literally for a whole year in his solo book in the 80s was a professional wrestler. And Johnny really gets into the kind of hype man, wrestling manager, mumbo jumbo for a bit. While Val, she shows up at a casino and despite being a teenager, wiggles her way through. And, she's super duper smart. So she's like, let's sell our ship and we're just going to gamble because I can make a bunch of money. I'm super smart. But of course, Val screws up and her and Franklin lose all the money when they were supposed to be just kind of staying with the ship. And now's a good point. I mentioned how the last issue presents Celestial Quest, but both of these issues have pretty clunky narration and exposition around continuity. This time they're referencing a little bit of Secret Wars, but more specifically an annual that followed Secret Wars. Ben and Johnny jump in the middle of a fight, one of these gladiator fights, because it turns out they're between two children. Sue turns invisible and helps her kids cheat at gambling, while Reed kind of goes and screws around with the Profiteer. The kids rake in the loot and they trade. They basically take over the casino just because they won so much. And they make a trade. Hey, give us our ship back, give us some fuel, which is the whole reason this story started in the first place. And also we're going to purchase for their freedom, but we're going to purchase those two slave kids from you. So now the Fantastic Four have a little Skrull girl and a Kree boy on their ship. And they were bred to be gladiator fighters despite being kids. So they're a little bratty. And Ben makes a bunch of comments about them having chipmunk style voices, which is funny and it works, but it's just something slightly off about Ben's voice in this issue at least. And they warp right into the middle of the Alliance fleet. And next, I guess, is Empyre number 1. Neither of these two issues felt essential to what I assume to actually be the plot of Empyre. I guess they're more like 0.5 issues for their respective series to then direct you into the event. It's whatever.
Yeah, I wasn't wholly impressed by the Avengers issue. I even thought Pepe Reliaz's art felt a little bit rushed here, and it might have been considering just some of the stuff on Iron Man's armor looked a little wonky, but because I only read the Avengers part, I was interested to see how heavily Tony was the central character as he's still going through all that Iron Man 2020 stuff, which is weird because he's not fully back yet. So it's weird to see him be your central tie while you're also doing this big event with him as things are kind of colliding on your schedule.
Yeah, well, Marvel's continuity, as we know, sucks, over the past 10 years or so, regardless. But with the pandemic and everything, even if they try to keep things in relative order, I imagine things are even more out of order. So who the heck knows? But it is also what you said stuck out to me, because it is also interesting that Iron Man is such a focal character in the Avengers issue, because that's the Al Ewing half of the story, and Slott, for the moment, is also the Iron Man writer.
Well, for now, we know, at least to know that Christopher Cantwell, who's helming the current Doctor Doom series, is going to be launching the new #1 whenever that comes out. But I do, my comments from what I'm just hearing from the Fantastic Four issue, isn't Reed smart enough to know that the house always wins when gambling?
Yeah, well, he doesn't really gamble. He's not. There's not really questionable stuff with him, in my opinion, in here.
I'm just saying. I feel like Valeria and Reed should both be smart enough to know that.
Yeah. Well, for Valeria, she's the one who really gets gambling. But it is actually kind of cool where, she loses it all, but then Sue catches up with them, and basically Sue just sits there invisible and manipulates, looks around at everyone else's cards around the table, and then whispers to Val, or straight up flips the dice. It lands on something and she nudges it. It's kind of entertaining.
All right. But then my other part with that is this gearing up for more heroes fighting heroes? Are the Avengers going to end up fighting the Fantastic Four? Because if that's what's going to happen, I don't care about this event at all. I'm
not clear, because there was kind of tease at the end of the Avengers issue where it almost presented like the Fantastic Four are going to be at odds with them. But I'm not really certain. I don't know how that would work out. I guess the Fantastic Four, especially with these two slave kids, they may be more pro-alliance, whereas the Avengers, who are coming from the perspective of the Celestial Messiah and Swordsman, they're going to be more pro-Katati. And the Fantastic Four aren't as familiar with the Katati, so that may be their difference. That may be their different perspective off the bat. But there's at least going to be a turning point at a certain point when everyone realizes that Hulkling is being manipulated, and all the main characters we know are going to team up and whatever.
What?
I'm really just in this story for the continuity stuff. I'm hoping Elijah shows up. That's about it. I just like seeing, this is that other Skrull story. When did the Skrull Kill Crew show up? Even though they also, some of them have not been 110% confirmed yet, but they also cut literally half of the planned tie-ins for this book. They've just canceled due to the pandemic and then the slow start back up. And maybe someone's shaking some sense into Marvel, which has canceling half your planned tie-ins, which are already solicited, which there are already ideas for plot lines, has its pluses and minuses, but I don't know, maybe plus overall in the end.
Off the top of my head, I can't remember what was and what wasn't canceled, but if the X-Men books were canceled, that makes me happy, because I don't know how we would handle all the X-Men books plus the Empyre tie-ins plus X of Swords when that starts up. I feel like we'd go insane.
Yeah, I know that at least for the moment, again, Marvel, because also we've referenced on a couple of the past few shows how Marvel made some of their books digital only. Now, as of 2 days ago or so, they announced that they are to some extent going to print physically some of those at least. So Hawkeye Freefall, for example, the single issues will be coming out at some point, obviously after the digital has already come out, but for those collectors. But I know, at least for the moment, there was a Ghost Rider one-shot, which was canceled. which is interesting because we're going to talk about Ghost Rider later on the show, and Ghost Rider has weaved between some of these events already. There was an Absolute Carnage tie-in and whatever else, and there's like Marvel has just too many books, but obviously the writers are on it and someone is reading them, so it's unfortunate. But there's a book called Black Panther and the Agents of Wakanda, and that was supposed to transition into a tie-in miniseries, and that was canceled. So effectively, that book has plot lines unresolved. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I saw Jim Zub gave an interview about that because that was his book. It seems like that guy just can't catch a break where all the stuff keeps getting canceled, which is disappointing. Because from what his stuff is, from what I read, I liked his stuff. But moving on to kind of the magic and mystics section of Marvel, as we've got these all grouped together. Doctor Strange number 5. This is Mark Waid and Kev Walker. So to catch you guys up, if you remember what's been going on, because it's been a while, Doctor Strange is investigating who and what has come into as a magical forge, creating and stealing weapons and getting in the hands of others to make destruction. And takes him to Nidavellir, where he fights like 2 demons, Mr. Smile and Mr. Sulk. And then he finds that one of his friends that had been dwarves on Nidavellir was killed. And then he gets a message from Zelma, where we see him make a visit to the Strange Academy to receive a message from Grimlack the Troll's widow, where he's informed that the prominent wand maker has died in a murder, and this might be connected to what's going on with Strange's case. And then hearing that the murderers of Grimlack were heading to the Krill City Market for kind of this like auction, Strange and Dr. Druid devise a plan to disguise themselves to get into the auction. Because if they go into Krill City with their current looks, they'll just be killed because all the demons want to fight Doctor Strange. So with misdirection and the element of Strides, they end up using like technology devices to mask themselves to look as demons. And Strange takes the one that makes him look like the lackey, while Druid takes the one that makes him look like the leader of these 2 demons that go in at the auction to discover it's actually Madame Mask who's behind the selling and stealing of Strange's weapons from his forge. And Mask seeks out the demon that she thinks is Strange, but then reveals that it's Dr. Druid to her surprise. And then meanwhile, like Dr. Strange is like high up in the rafters, like planning his strike. So the next issue, I think the big fight's going to happen. But this is still pretty fun. It obviously spinning out of Mark Waid's already kind of lengthy previous run on Doctor Strange, where he was in space, but now he's getting to more kind of classic Doctor Strange stories per se, even though he's got the power of his hands to use surgery again. I like the fact that he at least incorporated Strange Academy in here, so there doesn't seem to be like quite a divide, but that was more of like a, hey, Strange Academy is here, go read that too, as we got like a pop-up text for that as well. And then Kev Walker's art continues to be pretty good too. It reminds me a little bit of like John Romita Jr., but yeah, Doctor Strange number 5 continues to be pretty good, and I think this next issue will wrap up the opening arc on the who's been taking Strange's weapons, and then we'll see what happens with the Dr. Druid stuff as Wade's been setting up for maybe like a double cross and he turns into a villain there.
Yeah, here's our little crossover that is not a crossover because Strange does not show up at all in Strange Academy number 2. So who knows when it takes place. And this is continuity-wise also very early into the Strange Academy series. Written by Scotty Young, art by Humberto Ramos. Last issue came out March 4th. So it's been quite a while and I don't remember shit really. I think Dormammu's son has a crush on the main character. I think that's hinted at here, which is kind of interesting because he's like a demon extra dimension dude. The first day, this whole issue is the first day of school. They go through all their wacky classes. They're all dangerous. It's basically like Harry Potter, exactly. Magic literally banishes 2 of her students to hell when one of them shows up late and the other one kind of teases the other one for showing up late. So she just sticks them together in hell. Man-Thing teaches botany. I don't know how that works since he doesn't talk. And then there's a class list as an extras page, kind of like Wolverine and the X-Men and some other books in this vein. It's still pretty fun, and Ramos's art, I think, is pretty solid as well. Similar comments as I made on the first issue. But there's not a ton to really latch onto in this issue. There's not like much furthering of characterization. There's a few little hints at things to come, but mostly this issue is really more getting a feel for the school some more. You get the hectic day in the life and setting up more some of the teachers and things like that and their connection to the students. And I don't even think it really teases something next. I don't know what happens next, but it's a school book, so whatever. It was solid. I like this book.
Ghost Rider number 7, Ed Brisson, Aaron Cooter. The conclusion to Hearts of Darkness 2. Johnny Blaze is consumed by the demons he's been sending back to hell and manipulation by Mephisto. He's totally lost it, and he's about to kill Doctor Strange before Wolverine, Punisher, and Danny Ketch can come to his aid. And meanwhile, trying to save Johnny from Mephisto's influence, Lilith is commanding all these demons on Earth, or at least the ones in New York City, to take their shot at Blaze and Mephisto, and then she'll pay out for whoever kills them. So we get this giant fight in the middle of Manhattan, or I guess at least in front of Bleecker Street, Doctor Strange's house. And then Danny comes out in the last second with his new persona. I think it's the Spirit of Corruption, if I remember. And then he's able to turn Johnny back and save the day. And then Johnny takes himself and he's like, thanks to the crew. And hey, by the way, Danny, I'll need you for this upcoming war in hell. And then our epilogue sees Danny back in the bar and he finds Blackheart holding his friends hostage. And he's like, hey, you and I will have to join forces if we're going to win this upcoming fight in hell. I guess against Mephisto. I think that's what they're setting up for. I enjoyed this. It was, I think, a lot easier to go jump back in because it was so much action based. It was very much an action issue to showcase Aaron Cooter, which I'm happy is on this book because I enjoy his art. But I'm wondering where we're left to go now. Is Johnny our protagonist? Is Danny our protagonist? I feel like we're just going to keep switching back and forth. And at least I'm getting the vibe that Danny is going to get his Ghost Rider powers back eventually. And I think the whole Spirit of Corruption thing is just like this little like intermediate phase until we have that moment where Johnny eventually will give him back his Ghost Rider powers. But I enjoyed this. I don't know how much it really lives up to as a sequel to Hearts of Darkness, but Vince, I'll leave you to talk about that, how it stacks up in terms of a sequel.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't stack up at all. It really, the original was John Romita Jr. art. It was, a prestige one-shot, and had the three main characters like actually prominent and doing things. It's just this was ultimately just a glorified guest appearance for Punisher and Wolverine. And the Blackheart, which was the prominent part of the original Hearts of Darkness, is really just, we saw him also in like only one page in previous issues, but in this issue, they finally get to Blackheart, and it's just another final page tease as the story moves forward. I don't know why Johnny didn't just give Danny back the Spirit of Vengeance at the end of this issue. Johnny is fine now. He basically says, hey, Danny, I shouldn't have done that. I mean, he doesn't really say that, but they make their peace. So it's like, just fix it. And can we get out of this stupid status quo? Mephisto makes a one-off joke telling Punisher he'd be a good Ghost Rider, har har. Blackheart, that final page is pretty dope. But honestly, I feel Cooter's art has a ton of inconsistency in this issue. And I think in the sum total of things, besides like maybe the number one issue, that's kind of been my takeaway almost every time. And not even counting the fact that there are really two artists on this book or more flipping between things. I don't know. The crazy thing is this was only issue 7. I feel like we're a little bit farther, but because we really are, because there have been a couple one-shots. So I don't know. I'm reading it because I like Ghost Rider and everything, but this
it's the vibe I'm getting too.
Kind of been disappointing.
Yeah, I think it's kind of started off great, and it's flamed out very, very fast. I'm just wondering. I'm just left wondering what's the direction of this series. That's my biggest takeaway, and if some consistency can hold itself down, I think it'll find its voice. But issue 7, really issue 10, I don't know how much longer we're going to hold on, but I might keep reading it for the fact it's the first time we've had a Ghost Rider book in a while.
Yeah, and my concern is, all right, it's finding its place or it's getting to the status quo that I actually want, but that's not a guarantee. I mean, I'm sure issue 1 did pretty well. There was some hype about a Ghost Rider book again. You know, the art looked great, everything like that. But especially considering that they're doing some of these one-shots, which could either be, you know, a move to squeeze out more story or to squeeze out more money or both. It's hard to say whether, you know, from what perspective, at least the marketing team and everything like that looks at those one-shots for this series, as opposed to, say, Immortal Hulk, where the one-shots are just, you know, cash in, give me more. But, you know, how long can this series realistically last in today's market and today's Marvel? And by the time they cancel it, are we going to get the Danny Ketch or even Danny Ketch and Johnny book that like most people really wanted? Like no one went into this saying, oh yeah, Danny Ketch is going to be Ghost Rider again. He's going to be in a, you know, the main character of a book, but we're really looking forward to him having a different costume and powers. No one said that going into that. No one says that about basically any character, let alone, you know, like a B, C lister who hasn't starred in a book in 20 years. And, you know, if issue 15 hits and Johnny and Danny's still the spirit of corruption, and then it gets canceled at 20 or whatever, at 18 or whatever, like what's the damn point?
Right. And I think the more disappointing thing is I don't think Danny's been Ghost Rider since issue 1. So
yeah, I don't even remember when that happened. All right. Moving on to Hawkman number 25, written by Robert Venditti, art in this issue by Mark Castiello, inking by Danny Miki. So this, similar to Empyre, I'm actually catching up with issue 24 as well, as the book finally moves away from You're the Villain and Infected stuff, even though from everything I've heard, Venditti handled that about as well as you could. Probably easily among the books affected, probably handled it the best. But coming out of that status quo is that Carter is now with Shiera, aka Hawkwoman, who is a totally different character from Hawkgirl, who was on the Justice League book, or I guess is on, or not on the Justice League book anymore. I don't even know. I don't care. They're on a planet, but also like in an alternate dimension with a bunch of caveman type dudes, and they're making some Stonehenge things, and it's related to both of their first lives. And kind of the backbone of this series is that Carter's first life, he was a shitty person. He was like this like war. I mean, it's basically he was the Silver Surfer. So he's called Qatar the Deathbringer. And then that explains the whole resurrection gimmick that he will have peace at last if he redeems and saves as many lives as he killed and cost in his first life. And they fight some guards in red Hawkman-esque armor. Then the Lord Beyond the Void shows up, who I guess is the leader of this realm and possibly was essentially Carter's original Galactus figure. They fight together against this Lord of the Void, Lord Beyond the Void, but he beats them and he ties them up, and he's going to suck up their live energy, which of course is plural for them. And that'll make him super strong and invade other universes, including, I guess, the main one that we know. I don't know. There's also an artist change between part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is Fernando Passarin. And this arc is not really blowing me away. It's just kind of fine right now. I think this is still a solid book, but it's kind of just a solid book. But I'm going to keep reading now that it's a little bit more on a straighter path. And hopefully this arc isn't super long, or at least gets more interesting and maybe move on to different stuff. Who knows? And this is another book where this is issue 25. This could get canceled at the end of this arc. Who knows? But it's good.
X-Force number 10, Ben Percy, Joshua Cassara. So Beast is back to being a total piece of shit that we've seen him be in the past, as it's revealed that he's kind of behind the entire Terra Verde telefloronic experiment gone horribly wrong. X-Force is trying to stop the spread of the telefloronics brought on by Beast's manipulation and death of the president's son that we saw in previous issues. And this caused the whole nation to be overrun by the vegetation and kind of killed. And then Jean discovers this and essentially casts Beast out and calls him out for what he's done before going through the portal with Black Tom Cassidy, then just kind of just saves the day. And then the end is Logan and Jean sharing a bath in a beer as Jean's mulling over the decision on whether to quit the team and what her position on the team really is after finding out what Beast did, going along with the fact of we can't keep secrets from each other, as this series is kind of taking that direction. And then also I think Percy is having fun again as he keeps killing Kid Omega. I think this is like his third or fourth death at this point. And then this is at least Domino's second death because she dies here too. But of course, death doesn't matter with the X-Men anymore unless you're Kitty Pryde, because they can just bring everyone back. I still thought it was good, though I'm wondering where we're going to go with this ending with Logan and Jean and what comes next, because I guess this is kind of the end of an arc, per se.
Yeah, this is the Spooky Plans issue. Quentin is particularly edgy, which is a plus or minus. There's also a pouches joke, essentially. Kasara's art here is strong. It's slightly different from the earliest issues. I don't know how to pin it down. I didn't pay attention to the credits. Maybe it was a different colorist, or the colorist isn't going as hard. Those are my two guesses. Because you still get a lot of the stuff, but it just doesn't feel as like rich and vibrant, which was that very unique look, which I think came a lot from the colors in the first two issues, where like, especially me, I was going back and forth on like, do I not like this art or do I like this art? And ultimately settled on really liking it. And some element of that is not quite here in this issue, in my opinion. But otherwise the art is good. There's some body horror shit. When Quentin like gets turned into a bunch of flowers, it's pretty cool. Obviously this is Krakoa Dawn of X, so it doesn't matter, as we know. That's the whole point. But we don't like see Quentin and Domino back towards the end of this issue. So I wonder if they're going to bother wasting pages in the next issue to show that, or just, next issue, next story, they're back, they're fine. And there's also
so far, remember when Domino died the first time, it was just like, all right, Domino's back.
Yeah. We also, as Jean considers leaving, there's some hints towards other characters like Colossus possibly showing up, who we already saw prominently in a couple of issues of this series. And I think he would be an interesting fit, especially considering his current kind of perspective on things. Beast is a jerk. I don't really like that, but that's years before this. Someone else screwed that up, and at this point, especially since initially he was kind of in opposition to Cyclops, at this point I kind of lean into it and just say, yeah, Beast is a jerk. And then Logan and Jean is just, I don't know. This is a good functional issue. It's kind of not quite what I want from X-Men, and that's kind of as my take as it evolves on Dawn of X overall. Or I don't even know if we can still call this Dawn of X.
We can just call it the Dawn of X era, the Hoxpox era, or the Hickman era. We'll see what one gets dubbed as this goes on, but I don't know. Truthfully, they've pretty much just come out right and said that it's a polyamorous relationship at this point. I don't really give a shit. Do what you want. But it's like I don't really care at this point. Like, being a fan, I've seen, or I think you could probably comment on this too. Like, I've seen Scott with Jean plenty, and I've also seen Scott with Emma for almost an entire generation now too. Like, and Emma is the kind of the odd one out when we're kind of going with this relationship. So it's weird to not see Emma's involvement as much, but it's almost to the point where I'm just like, I kind of almost prefer Emma with Scott just because that's more what's been the status quo for so long, because Jean's either been like, evil or dead for so long, which is a weird thing. But like, I'm just like, it also, like, it's Sex Island on Krakoa everyone anyway. Everyone's just doing everyone. So I don't really care. I don't think it doesn't impact me much at all. But our final book of the week in Stealth number 3. This is the Skybound series from Image. It's Mike Costa and Nate Veligard. There's a lot of moving parts here in this final issue. We have the Dead Hand organization going around killing doctors, this time a prominent specialist in Alzheimer's, and this is under the orders of the Two-Faced Man that Dan and I were talking about the last time we talked about this book. And then we have this Stealth using his son's jacket with his press credential inside to get into this bank safety deposit box room under the cover of doing a story about the time Stealth staved hostages there. And that's because the ruse is that he knows that the suit is there after Tony took it and hid it there from him in the previous issue. So we see him bust out with the suit after he asks for a cup of water and the security guard leaves. And then we see Tony is with his friend Santa, who's also a reporter, and he's asking her to publish a story of being outing that Stealth is his dad because he trusts her to do it. And then we see we have a member of the Dead Hand making a back deal negotiation with the local Detroit gangs to go against the Two-Faced guy, as he feels the Two-Faced Man is making himself too vulnerable after showing that he's committed a murder on a Facebook live stream. And then Stealth is back at this old house where his brother's files were being kept, searching for them. And then we see a bunch of dudes start to swarm in on it, and that's the end of the issue. It's good, but I don't really know what's entirely happening 3 issues in. So I'm hoping the 4th issue, when that comes out, gives us a clear look at things. But I still like it, but I don't know how much longer I'm hanging on things here. But that's our books for the week. We finished them all. Vince, thoughts on books this week?
I felt like I didn't read a ton, but that's a mix of both the post-shutdown startup slow trickle and also kind of just us / the industry boxing us into a corner, at least me. I'm sure there were books coming out that I maybe was previously reading, but either I lost track or it went in a direction I don't care about. That applies to basically the entire Batman line, as Mike hinted at in the very beginning of the show. So I was kind of underwhelmed at both the quantity and the quality. And I'm going to give my pick of the week to Strange Academy.
Okay, you're giving it to Strange Academy. I mean, I'm happy Scotty Young and Humberto Ramos have found a book to carve out. I know we were kind of up in the air of what Ramos was going to do after kind of now his tenure on Spider-Man being done, that Patrick Gleason's kind of joined the ship on the rotating artists there. But, I like Scotty Young, and it seems to be a series that hopefully is able to breathe more life after a really unfortunate slow start 2 issues in because of the pandemic hitting right after that issue 1 hit. But I'm going to give mine to DCeased Dead Planet number 1. I think Tom Taylor handles the DC characters in the way that at least I want them to be / what I remember. Not every, and it's I don't know. It's to a point of just all right, John's aged up, but at least in this universe, it wasn't the way Bendis did it that pissed me off, or just other things about it. I don't know. It feels like pre-New 52, which is what I didn't like. But I don't know. There's some really good character stuff here between Lois and John and Damian. And then, Trevor Hairsline's art, I think, is really, really cool and fun. And he can draw the hell out of some zombies attacking people. But other than that, Vince, any thoughts, any pluggables for this week? Anything looking forward for next week? I think there is a book we're looking forward to for next week, but I don't want to say what it is yet.
I have no idea what it is. So,
well, I'll remind you right after we go off the air, and you'll remember.
Okay. Every week is a new surprise as a comic book reader.
That's true. We will be still covering new books next week. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Krackle Comics, both pages, and then continue to please remember to wash your hands, wear a mask when you go outside. I got nothing else. Vince, you have anything else? Because if not, I'm ready to bow out.
Correct.
All right. That's it for this week. Bye.